Great Wednesday. Welcome to the Fully Human Connections podcast. I'm your host, King. I'm joined by my co-host, Reggie. How you doing today, Reggie?
Doing well, King. Always good to be here with you on Wednesday morning. I know I say that every week and it sounds like rote, but it's actually true. So I will continue to say it.
No, I don't think it does. I think that, saying things means that you acknowledge it. And I'm grateful to be here with you as well. So what's your spiritual energy number?
I'm coming in at a 10. I'm feeling good this morning. Got some good early work done, and the week has been going well as well. Getting some important things done for me, and I'm getting to know my new cat, who's 17 years old, who came to us after somebody died. I'm getting to work with him a little bit more, and so I'm good. Another living being in the house.
All right. Well, I'm a 10 as well. Um, I'm glad the cat is helping you find your 10. He's wise. So he's been here for 17 years. You should learn to listen to him, trust his ways.
Well, in fact, his age is the transposition of mine. He's 17 and I'm 71. So it's actually, I never thought of that till you just said that. So thank you.
There you go. See, you and the cat are kindred spirits. So what's your gratitude moment this morning?
Yeah, I'm grateful to have this, all joking aside, I'm grateful to have this misnamed cat whose name is Chip, which is just a horrible name for a cat. I don't think he hears well anymore, so we could call him anything. We can call him Rover. But I'm grateful to have him here because it's just to experience on a daily basis and have someone responsible for another living being, as anybody who owns any kind of pet knows is pretty cool thing. But I'm grateful for roof over my head, for food in my refrigerator, for running water, indoor plumbing, and having all of my basic needs met. Which, the more I see difficult things in this country and around the world, I mean, Gaza and Ukraine, and I guess Sudan being among the worst, but just how blessed I am to get up every morning with my little aches and pains and be able to go about my life doing things I think are important with some good friends and remaining family. So I'm grateful for all of that. And every day I'm grateful for it, not just on Wednesday mornings with you.
Okay, that time has arrived. So Reggie, I'll step out for a quick second, but I'm grateful as well, and I'll join you in a second.
Okay. So for those of you who are tuned in here live, King has been waiting for a very important call from a government agency, those that actually are remaining and able to do business, and he didn't want to miss it, so he's just taken a moment off to take that call. I'm not sure if he's going to be 2 minutes or 10 minutes. So what we're going to be doing today, for those of you who might be new, we've been speaking about my 2020 book, Healing America's Narratives, subtitled The Feminine, the Masculine, and Our Collective National Shadow, pretty much for the last 3 years. We went through it chapter by chapter, and we're just continuing to apply what's in the book to current events in the United States. So again, I began writing it, began the notes for the book back in 2016. Actually, got the first draft or so done around 2018, and then continued to work, revise, and get it edited. And it came out in 2022, probably about 6 to 8 weeks into the January 6th hearings after the attempted coup to overthrow the 2020 election by the then President Donald Trump. So since the book came out, we finished up with the Joe Biden administration. We lived through the Harris-Trump campaign, and we have been living with the Trump administration now since January 20th of 2024. And I don't know how many executive orders that he has put out there, and the dismantling of the executive branch of the United States with all of the different administrative agencies. USAID is gone. They're going to close down the Department of Education. As you know, they have defunded the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, which provides us with PBS and NPR. They've effectively flip-flopped with the war in Ukraine, whereas the vast, almost 100% of the United States people in Congress were in favor of defending Ukraine. And Trump and J.D. Vance attacked President Zelensky. I forget if that was back in February or March. In the Oval Office, they kind of ambushed him. So there's a lot going on. And today we're actually going to speak about the deliberate attempts to control information. Like it's a page right out of George Orwell's book, 1984, where what the leader and the larger system that the leader controls, Big Brother, as Orwell refers to it, basically controls information, and in a moment can just say, okay, today we're helping Ukraine stop the invasion of Russian forces, and then tomorrow we might just say, Ukraine started the war with Russia, and we're not going to help Ukraine anymore. And what happens with the Trump administration is all of the Republicans in Congress and all of his appointees in the administration just go along with whatever he says. Most recently, after the Bureau of Labor Statistics put out the monthly report, and the numbers were down, Trump fired the director of the Bureau and says the numbers were rigged, even though it was his director who filed the report. So he's been known to do that before. Back in the 2020 election, when he lost to Joe Biden, his appointed director of national cybersecurity, it's actually a longer title than that, a gentleman by the name of Christopher Krebs, came out 5 days to a week after the election, said it was the most secure election in American history, that in fact Biden had won by almost 8 million votes, and there was no evidence of fraud. In about 4 or 5 days after that announcement, Trump fired Krebs. So we're going to be, talking about this problem with information, and more specifically in the context of the larger picture of Healing America's Narratives, where we're looking at the shadow of the country. We're looking at basically the 9 shadow traits that we've been talking about, just really briefly, and then we'll get into the specifics of today about information, are ignorance, arrogance, fear, bigotry, violence, greed, excess, untrustworthiness, and bullying. So those are the 9 shadow traits. And specifically today, we're going to apply them to a very, very stark Orwellian type attempt, not even an attempt, Orwellian control of information. And any information that comes out that the president doesn't like, he says is rigged or fake, and he makes up new information. And any information that he does like, he doubles down and triples down, and he deliberately distracts the American people, especially American people who use social media for news, from what's really going on by starting rumors and calling things hoaxes. So the danger in that, and I'll acknowledge King in just a second. The danger in that is that even if we had a president who wasn't trying to control information and call things hoaxes when they're not really hoaxes, the information ecology has been very, very slippery and unhealthy since especially since smartphones and social media, where more and more people get their news from social media, and social media are not journalistic institutions. They're media companies. And they publish things and they don't check their facts, and a lot of people believe what they find there. To have that in place and have a president who deliberately misleads and outright lies and fires people who put out facts, statistical facts based on data that anybody else can check, who fires those people, it's a really dangerous time because democracy cannot survive outside of a factual, truth-embracing environment. And the United States of America, well, let's just get specific, on August 6, 2025, is no longer really grounded day to day in fact-based truth. Now, there are people trying really hard, investigative journalists, but again, the two examples, the firing of the director of the Bureau of Labor and Statistics, and the turnaround with Ukraine, which they kind of are turning around again now. But even all of the Republican and Democrat, all the Republican senators who were supporting President Zelensky when Trump and Vance ambushed President Zelensky in the White House, in the Oval Office, in a televised, staged spectacle for television, those Republican senators came out and criticized Zelensky right after that happened. So there's no integrity, there's only loyalty to the president, whether he lies or not. And it's just how Putin runs Russia, how other authoritarian regimes have been run throughout history. So that's what's true right now in the United States. And the only thing that hasn't happened, although it's in process, that journalists haven't been jailed for what they've said yet. Although large media companies who own CBS News, Fox News, NBC News, ABC News, they have basically paid, the president has threatened them, and they've basically paid what I would call extortion money or bribes, and agreed to, in some cases, really not criticize the president. So it's a really slippery slope that we're on. And it seems that the majority of Americans don't really seem to either notice it or care about it, because they don't think what's happened in other countries can happen here. And it has already happened, and it's getting worse. So that's where we are today. The importance of factual information and how the president is controlling information and telling lies and calling names and doing a lot of damage to what once was a democracy, albeit an imperfect one. So I'll pause there and invite my good friend King back into the conversation.
Yeah, glad to be back. I had to take a call offline with Trump to make sure that what we talked about today he was on board with, because he definitely didn't want to say anything that would jeopardize our U.S. citizenship.
Well, just quick question. Was he listening to me while you were on the call with him? Did he have me up on his screen?
He had you on the screen, but he was actually talking to me, so he was trying to multitask. I think he missed a little bit of what you were saying.
Okay.
Hopefully he doesn't play it back. No, but thank you for continuing the conversation, Reggie, while I was gone. And understanding the topic, where we are today with so much disinformation out there in the world that people can't tell the difference. I saw a YouTube video, and the guy quoted something that I wanted to repeat, because I think it pretty much encapsulates the conversation that we're going to have. He says people need to learn the difference between propaganda and information, between education and indoctrination, between connection and performance. And I don't think most people do. And I also think that where we are, the reason Trump is successful, at the end of the day, from my perspective, from what I've studied and what I've seen and learned over the years, is truly for those who, again, identify with white identity and want to keep white identity in power. And they realize that the trade-off to maintain that power is Trump's kingdom, so to speak. And so they tolerate that and support that because he achieves that objective for them. And that's what you clearly see. I mean, from the ones who are in power, the ones who have at least education to understand that what's going on is wrong, and that what they're doing is deliberately manipulating people. Those are the people I'm speaking of,
Okay.
the ones who's intentionally complicit with what he's doing, but it serves their agenda as well. Now, the masses who vote for Trump and the MAGA movement. I think it really comes down to fear and again, their belief of being told they're a victim. They've been told they're a victim their entire lives. Their parents and grandparents were told they were victims, um, and that this society is always trying to, not society, but their enemies are anyone who doesn't look like them, i.e., Native Americans, blacks, now gays and lesbians and Hispanics, and now we've been all bundled up into one thing called woke. So anybody who shares any kind of empathetic, emotional connection or caring about people that don't look like them, that's outside the white identity perspective, then you consider woke. And now they've made woke a bad word. So much so that even some Democrats who claim to be Democrats and progressive are saying that, well, Democrats need to tone down the woke rhetoric. And it's like they don't even take in consideration that the people who are branded under their woke identity is the basis of their party. The Democratic Party wouldn't exist when any election if it wasn't for the base of black women. And black women make up the teeth and the energy of the Democratic Party. And over 300,000 black women have lost their jobs through what the massive layoffs Trump has done in his administration with downsizing the government and just brilliantly firing people. And no one really talks about that. No news really talks about how they've been impacted. Every time you see someone on the news, again, the media continues to be complicit. They show you how white people are being impacted and what they're going through and how they're suffering. The white farmers, the Trump voters, they keep showing those individuals as though they're the only ones that are suffering from Trump's policies and his actions since he's been his executive order since he's been in office. So it's a continuation of just continue seeing that. Um, Again, it harbors back to what Noam Chomsky talked about in manufacturing consent, and that's what we see nowadays. The media is complicit, even though they try to say they're not, and that they're giving us information. Majority of the media, not all of the media channels. I can think of a few. I'm sure you probably have your sources. I would say, with the exception of PBS News, NPR News, Democracy Now, um, Zato TV with few sites. I'm sorry, with
was it Mehdi Hassan you're talking about?
Mehdi Hassan, yes. With those exception of those sites and maybe two or three others, the rest are definitely corporate bought, controlled, and owned by one of the five families who owns all the media. And their goal is continued manipulation, continued compliance, and continued control. You know, we live in where it's a phenomenon where the masses of people adopt shadow, as you talked about with Carl Jung. The shadow thinking blindly accepts the narratives and surrender their intellectual independence without even realizing it. I mean, we live in a world where people believe that my opinion is more superior and more important than the facts that you outline. And so I'm going to double down on my opinion because that's what Trump created. He created an environment where it means you could be stupid as long as you can be a bully. Don't worry about trying to be smart. Just be a bully, and then you can be stupid and you can say stupid things, and it gets accepted as the way things are. I mean, Trump should have been shut down when he did the first debate and taught how politics really worked if they were truly understanding of keeping decorum in place. But they let Trump become a mass sensation on those debate stages and creating a condition in the environment for where we are today. Whereas he could just say, as you said, things that people know are blatantly not true. It's things that there are clear video evidence, like 2 years ago, of him saying something totally the opposite. But he'll just stay on that and then challenge the media person who challenged him by saying, I don't like you. You need to get out of here. And then bar that person from any future press conference. And again, we accept that as a society. I still can't believe how many people use Twitter. I would think that anybody who was a critical thinker or that was aligned with the direction of the propaganda that's going on in the world, but yet still they use Twitter. And knowing that, or X, and Twitter or X at this point, is controlled by Elon Musk. It's a white supremacist propaganda, far right. And they say far right. I haven't met anybody who's far right who's not white supremacist or racist. So until I meet that person, to me, there are synonyms in that context. Someone could show up and say, well, I'm far right, but I'm not a racist. I just believe in this particular policy initiatives. I've yet to find anyone because most of the people who wear that badge also believe in deleting woke education, as they call it, getting rid of woke history, um, have no issue with locking up um, people who they say are illegally here, immigrants, and shipping them off to the worst prisons in the world as a punishment. So folks who are complicit and accepting of that, then to me you're racist at your core. And I just kind of don't understand why they don't just come out and say it. That's the only thing I would give Trump as I close my first take is that Trump is unapologetically who he is. He doesn't try to be anyone other than I'm going to be a bully. I'm going to say what I can say to get the job done, and it means justifies the ends, or the ends justify the means. He walks in that space and he stands in that space, and whether you like him or not, you can at least expect him to defend his position at all costs. Um, his backers and his voters, not so much. I mean, they'll still continue to tell you that they love everyone, but yet still all the actions that they do show you that they don't love everyone.
Mhm.
That's the part to me that's I find to be so insulting. That's why I always say it's so funny. It's funny, but it's also refreshing and timely. And I keep hear me reference this all the time now because I watch it on a daily basis now as my lunchtime break. Is watch All in the Family and just watching Archie Bunker. And when you listen to his position on things, he's not saying things out of well thought out critical analysis. He's saying things based on his opinion, based on how he was raised, as you talked about your cultural givens. Um, and he doesn't want to sway from that, even though he doesn't have any depth to his argument at all. He knows it, and it gets shown that it doesn't change his position or his perspective. And so for me, I believe that the masses of people who are Trump voters, MAGA Trump voters, and ride or die with him and justify everything he does. And when you point out his hypocrisy, his criminality, his evilness, their counter is look what Obama did, look what Biden did. That's their way of not dealing with what Trump is doing, but I'm
Mhm.
going to shift and tell you what Biden did as a false equivalence. You know, so I don't know how far we have to fall before we reach the tipping point, as Malcolm Gladwell talks about in his book. But I think that's what's going to have to happen. I don't think that, I think the role that you and I are playing are important. I think we need to get this kind of information out there. I think others who are hearing this needs to also get their message out there. If you're advocating for justice, you advocating for fully human behaviors that people will begin to start to see each other as human beings and not by their race or their color or their ethnicity or their religion or their political party. We are not based off the so-called four tribes that we're in, that we're labeled by. We're much more than that. We're human beings that have our own independent thought. Until we can begin to really think on that level, I'm just uh, personally for me, and I share this right now, I'm looking to move out of the country. I don't think the country is going to change in my lifetime. I mean, I'm 55 years old, or going to be 56 this year. I haven't seen any indication where it's going to change. It seems like every time there's maybe two steps of progress forward, there seems to be five or six steps backwards. So, I mean, now we're pretty much Jim Crow has a new name. Jim Crow's cousin is anti woke. That's Jim Crow's cousin,
Mhm.
you know. And Jim Crow's cousin doesn't seem to be as evil as Jim Crow, but the policies and the behaviors and the objectives are still the same.
Yeah, so it's a lot. There's two things, maybe three. I want to speak to. One is the woke anti woke piece. I think I'll do that first because you and I have spoken about that in the past. I wrote about it in the book. Just woke. basically means aware of, concerned about issues, social issues usually, and issues of race and gender. The earliest I could find the word woke, that specific word, not just awake, but the word woke used, was in the 1930s in Leadbelly's song Scottsboro Boys, where he said, if you go down Scottsboro Way, make sure you stay woke because it's dangerous for blacks down there. But the idea of being woke, aside from the word itself, has been around for at least 2,500 years. Obviously not in the United States, which is not even 300 years old. But, you know, a Buddha is an awakened one. So, you know, Buddha was awake. When they met him, they said, are you a saint? He said, no. He said, are you a god? No. What are you? Because I'm awake. So the idea of being awake has been around for millennia. What has happened with the whole really effective anti-woke movement is basically taking what I refer to as the unhealthy iteration of wokeness, and the left did some real damage, you know, with it, and it gave the right a target, you know, and the right's been really skillful in putting a bullseye on the idea of woke, but yeah, I'm going to say beginning in the mid 90s. I don't know really when it began, but through the 2000s, 20aughts, and then the 2010s, it was especially prevalent in universities, but it was also prevalent in some corporations because of pressure put on by the left, where people on the left began to try to control language. Right? Basically, here's certain words you can't use. And we're not even talking about the N-word. You know, some of the more obvious ones are other racial slurs, which are kind of more acceptable than the N-word, but we're not even talking about that, but just in terms of how you should speak. And I mean, the LGBTQ, especially the trans community, you know, wanted people to identify their pronouns, and certain people be insulted if they wanted to be known as they as opposed to he or she. And I'm all for everybody's rights. So I mean, really clear. I think you know that. But what began happening was, if you weren't liberal enough in certain colleges or in certain corporations, but especially colleges and universities, you got shut down. When universities tried to bring in a more conservative speaker, the unhealthy woke students tried to keep them from coming on campus and wouldn't let them talk. And there's a wonderful book, Greg Lukianoff and Jonathan Haidt, The Coddling of the American Mind, which does a lot of other things, but shows some great examples of this. And what the right has now done is they've targeted the left's approach to police language, and they've done their own version of it. I mean, there's all these words now that can't appear. You know, the right is saying DEI and anything like it can't appear anywhere in government websites or government programs. So this is not to blame woke. It's to point to the consequences of the unhealthy iteration, because the far left did damage. They tried to shut down people's freedom of speech. You can't say that. You have to speak this way. We don't want to hear those ideas. They're dangerous ideas. So my take on the First Amendment is, you're either for freedom of expression, that everyone has a right to speak their mind. You disagree with them, or you're not for it. But if you start, cherry picking who can speak and who can't, then you're moving into an authoritarian space. And the left did a lot of that, especially on college campuses. Now, did they legislate it for the country and for the states and for local localities? No, they didn't. But in these private institutions, in some state institutions, they did that. And they should have been criticized for it. As you said, it's one thing to educate, It's another thing to indoctrinate people by limiting what language they can use. And that's what they did. So now the right is doing their own version of it. I'm against both of those. So that's one. Because there's woke, which I believe I'm woke. I believe I'm, significantly, this is going to sound elite, but it's really, I'm not elite financially or in terms of power. But I think I'm aware of social concerns and issues. I'm well above average in this country. Right? And I think you are as well. But I don't inflict that on people. I don't tell people, I'm smarter than you, I'm more woke than you, shut up, you should listen to me. I don't do that. I would never do that. I probably did it my first couple of years of teaching high school, but I wasn't woke then. I was just 22, 23. So that's the woke piece. The second piece is Trump, and we kind of know who he is. And there's a model of development that's called spiral dynamics. That's the shorthand for it. And they use colors to describe these different developmental levels. So I'm not going to go to the beginning of it. I'm going to go to where Trump is. Trump would be described as red. And that's the color that thinks might makes right. That's mercenaries, that's warlords, that's medieval times, those who had serfs working for them, and you did what you were told or you got killed. Graduation from red takes you to blue, which is a more traditional, hierarchical, authority-based way of looking at things. So every religion has that. There's a leader at the top. Every democratic nation has that. There's a leader at the top, and then you kind of do what you're told, but you kind of agree to it. After that, there's orange, which is the modern worldview, which is independent. You can figure out things on your own. You can go to college. You can just go get a job. You can learn a craft. You live the life you want to live as long as you're not hurting other people. Then there's more after that. Now, what the researchers found is that if you encounter somebody operating at red, especially in a modern or postmodern world where we live now, you can't reason with them. In certain cases, you can't even legislate them. And the basic phrase is, the only way you can stop red is with red. So the only way Trump can really be confronted, because we've seen that the courts aren't going to stop him. The Supreme Court gave him immunity. So the legal system isn't going to stop him. Somebody else who is more grounded in values and care and kindness and love, but who has not lost the power of assertiveness or even aggression, has to attack Trump and his followers the way Trump attacks everyone. When I say attack now, I'm speaking about using the legal system and using language. Jasmine Crockett is an example of that. In a less intense way, Bernie Sanders is an example of that. But people have to be willing to stand up to him, call him names. I mean, the best example, and I'll close my point, in the Oval Office with Vladimir Zelensky, if you look at every other world leader who sat in the Oval Office with Trump, they practiced placating him. They always complimented him because they know that's how you get things done with Trump. And then they said what they needed to say, but they were very careful not to insult him. Zelensky's at war. His country is at war. He's being attacked on television by J.D. Vance pointing his finger at him, and Trump making up things. And Zelensky was respectful, but he didn't back down. And what we had was this wartime young president who was willing to stand up to Trump, but also balanced the realization that Zelensky understands Ukraine needs America's help. So he couldn't just yell at Trump and call him names, because Trump would take that personally and take away all of America's help. But Trump doesn't know what to do when he's confronted by a powerful person in public, because nobody does it to him anymore. So Trump has to be confronted by somebody with power, by multiple people with power. And so far, the leaders of media corporations, of universities, of law firms, big law firms, have acquiesced to him. And they've taught him what he could get away with. And that's how authoritarians learn. Oh, I got away with that one. Let's see what I can do next. So red needs to be confronted by red. A might makes right. A bully needs to be bullied. I don't like that. I wish there were no bullies. But you break the bully's nose with a good punch and he goes down. Now he knows he can be hurt. And he's either going to double down or he's going to start being a little bit more wary. And Trump needs to be confronted in that way because he's not a reasonable person. He's manipulative. He's not stupid, but he doesn't use reason to accomplish what he wants to accomplish. He uses bullying. He uses power. He uses threat. And now he has the legislature and the courts on his side. So he's a very dangerous man. So those are the two things. The woke issue. So there's woke and there's unhealthy woke. And then there's the how do you stop a bully? Right? Not the way Gandhi did it. A hunger strike isn't going to stop Trump. All right? Peaceful protest isn't going to stop Trump. I hate to say that, but history shows us those examples.
Well, out there,
Yeah.
I definitely want to respond to quite a bit, but I'm going to hold off my response. We're going to take a break for our sponsor, then I'll pick my response up on the other side. So let's take a break for our sponsor right now.
The playbook for growing a local business online is simple. Capture new leads, conversationally convert those leads into sales, turn those customers into positive reviews, and then reactivate those customers into repeat buyers. And that's exactly what our platform does. In order to consistently generate new leads, you first need to be found. The quickest way to get search engines like Google to put your business at the top of search results is by having a steady flow of positive reviews. With our platform, you can show up in search and stand apart from your local competition by easily collecting new customer reviews through text. But getting found is only the beginning. Most consumers choose the first business that responds to them. So unless you start conversations with potential customers almost instantly, they'll go somewhere else. That's why we make starting conversations with website visitors as easy as clicking a button, connecting you instantly through text message so the conversation doesn't end when they leave your website. And we bring all your leads, no matter where they come from, into a single conversation stream that supports text, email, video messaging, Google Business Chats, and even Facebook and Instagram DMs, so you can respond faster and more efficiently than ever. When it comes to turning all those conversations into customers, we make collecting payments just another convenient part of the combo, so you get paid faster no matter how they prefer to pay. Next, you'll want to turn your new customers into happy reviews, which is a snap with our new review request quick actions. The more conversations and customers you generate, the easier it becomes to drive repeat business. We make reactivating contacts into customers as easy as, yup, you guessed it, the push of a button. With bulk actions, you can send out text and email campaigns to generate new sales whenever you have a new update, promotion, or story to tell. We make modern online marketing simple. Let's start growing your business today.
And we're back. Welcome to the Fully Human Connections podcast. I'm your host, King, and I'm here with Reggie. And we just came out for our sponsorship break and the second half of our show, so to speak. And I just want to kind of address some of the things Reggie laid out. Reggie, you mentioned the fact that the left went a little too far with their woke policies and cancellation of certain words and canceling certain people with cancel culture. And I agree that the left, with that cancel culture and all that, definitely did go a little too far. However, I'll push back by saying this, that had it not been woke, or had it not been that, the right would have found something. So it wasn't like, that led to this. That's just what they decided to pick out the closet to say, this is what we're going to wear in our argument for fighting the woke. We're going to put this outfit on, but they were going to wear an outfit.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. I just think it's important to know that the left is not
Innocent and
completely innocent, because they were trying to control language, and that's never a good idea if you really believe in democracy. But I agree with you 100%. The right was going to find something. I'm probably more upset because the left gave him such an easy target.
Well, that, and like I said, I just think that they were going to find a target to stand on, a hill to fight on regardless. And I don't agree with a lot of the cancellation policies and ideals that were laid out. Definitely not. But let's go back to, for example, the national debt. Now, when Obama was in office, we had the Tea Party that came out against Obama. They were so concerned about the debt that we had to create a Tea Party. And that was, again, because Obama was born with national debt. Now, in Obama's 8 years in office, Obama raised the debt ceiling from, when he came in, he was at $6.3 trillion, and he ended it at 14.4. So $8.1 trillion that he did in his 8 years of being in office. Now, Trump, again, this is also somebody who came on a crisis. He had to stimulate the economy. He had to do all these other things. So it wasn't he just came in with these radical policies and just raised the debt by $8.1 million. It was coming off where we were as far as a recession, what Bush had done with his politics and all those things.
Two wars.
And 2 wars, yeah. So then we have Trump come in, and just in his 4 years from 2017 to 2021, his starting debt point was 14.4. He raised it up to 21.6. So $7.2 trillion just in 4 years. I'm not talking about what he's doing so far in this particular decade, or this particular second term. And so that's mainly based on tax cuts to the rich. So, but my argument there is, where's the Tea Party now? So that shows the hypocrisy. So if you're so concerned about the debt, then how come you're not rallying against Trump, right? It should be anyone who's destroying the debt you should have your issue with. But that clearly shows. But that's what my point out woke. Yes, woke was wrong, and you're right, it became an easy target, but it wouldn't have mattered in the eyes of white supremacists and folks who have a racist agenda. They were going to find something to say, this is the hill we're going to fight on. This is where we get our base electrified. This is where we can now run against. There's no one from that same argument and arguing about the debt right now. And that's definitely, if Trump gets taken down, it's going to be because of Epstein. It's not going to be because of his policies that they had an issue with all this time. It's going to be because of Epstein and his base choosing to say, my racist agenda is going to be subservient to my hate for pedophiles. And that's where it's going to balance it. Like, for folks who don't believe that Trump was heavily involved with Epstein at this point, and didn't know that prior to even voting for him, it's like he was hanging out with his boys. If you were to equate a P. Diddy to Epstein, and you saw someone like Obama with P. Diddy all the time, hanging out on P. Diddy's planes, and that's all he did, just saw him a few videos, saw him on his plane, Obama would have been destroyed and never would have got elected. He would have got branded with that, and whether he was convicted in court or not would have been a totally separate issue. But he definitely been convicted in the court of public opinion and destroyed his political career quickly. And everybody would have been fair with that. There wouldn't have been any argument for it. People on both sides on the left side who loved Obama would have accepted it, because they would have been like, well, he was with him at least. I don't believe he did anything, but at least he was with him. That would have brought him down. So my point is saying is that at the end of the day, what I think we get caught up on is fighting Trump. And like you said, Trump's a bully, and you talked about the in the red mode. I believe the term, I forgot, was red. I don't know.
Yeah, red is the bullying, might makes right worldview. Yeah.
Yeah, so punching Trump in the face would knock him out. I agree with that in the bully metaphor. But I think that, again, Trump represents a movement. He's just the face of the movement. And the movement right now is experiencing, I think they're really contemplating getting rid of Trump because he has too much power and replacing it with someone else that's not going to have as much baggage as Trump is. And that's going to be worse. So just getting rid of Trump won't get rid of the MAGA movement. It won't get rid of this Project 25 policies and things they've outlaid. It's not going to get rid of any of that. So it'll just be Trump finally Epstein brought Trump down. Trump's no longer in office. A Democrat may get in office for the next term, but the energy around Project 2025 is still going to be there. That right Christian right organization, dollars, the Supreme Court being conservative, all that's still going to be in place. And so that's what my concern is. How do we recover from that? And I don't see how we're ever going to get to the point where we actually do have a champion who is someone who's willing to fight against injustice, that's willing to bring about bring love, energy into the political space. I just don't see how that person can even get elected. Because again, Obama was on paper the closest thing to that. And then once he got in office, we saw where, okay, it still was controlled by corporations. He still had the corporation's best interest at heart. Yeah, he wasn't as evil without his policies as Trump, but he still, at this stage in his presidency, had more deportations than any other president. And you can't argue that. Now he didn't do it the way Trump did it, with kicking down doors and snatching people from Home Depot parking lots and walking in people's houses. But yet he still deported more illegal immigrants than the other president prior to him. So again, I mentioned that to say is that at what point do we really realize that just getting back to status quo is not sustainable? This walking the line of saying, well, as long as you can have, like, even within colleges, you talked about woke being there and universities becoming woke. See, again, all that was just, for me, just figures of, or should I say, just prizes, so to speak, without any substance. There was nothing really there because of the fact that you're canceling certain words. Now, again, it's wrong, but just canceling certain words in colleges, taking those things off, didn't change anything from a behavioral context. So we've always had Democrats on the side of just creating what I consider to be examples of, or giving people false prizes. Biden choosing Kamala Harris as his way to appease Black women, as, okay, I'm going to choose, and saying that I'm going to choose a Black woman as my vice president, even before choosing her. And it's Kamala as his choice. Again, that was more of a showpiece, just like creating a holiday called Juneteenth. Showpiece, nothing really substantial. Nothing's going to really improve the lives of people. Just, you can now celebrate. Here's another day you can celebrate on your day or throughout the year, but there's nothing going to impact the people's lives that put you in office. Again, it's just figureheads and showpieces, and that's what we get from the left. So until that changes, is where I'm going with the summary. Until the left stops playing these, just giving you hope and figureheads or things to be happy about, but doesn't really bring substantial change. And then the right being just blatantly unequal, evil and unjust in their policies. I don't really see why someone like myself, who has the means, who want to stay here in America. I mean, what is it really America is really offering to make me feel confident to say, I want to bring another generation of kings to grow up in this country, and maybe they can fight and see a better day, where I just don't see it. I've really lost. I don't think I really haven't had it, but now I'm further convinced that I don't see America ever getting to the point where it's a country that truly lives up to what is written in its documents.
Yeah. So I mean, that's two things. One is that saddens me, and I understand it 100%, and I honor how you're looking at that, and it also makes me sad. But I mean, I agree, and then what we're talking about is such a complex issue. I mean, one thing we haven't spoken about, and I'm just going to say it now. We don't have time to get into it in detail. Maybe next week. But it goes back to Justice David Souter's. So the thing that keeps him up at night. This is back in 2012. He said this had nothing to do with Donald Trump. He said, if we don't do something about the level of civic ignorance in this country, that's how democracies fail. And how do we, in fact, let's just say that the biases are a given. People are going to be leaning left, people are going to be leaning right for different reasons. But imagine if they leaned left or right and really understood the government system in the United States. They understood the Electoral College, which has to be gotten rid of because it just does a lot of damage, and it takes the power of voting away from individuals in the presidential vote. They really understood the separation of powers and how Congress is supposed to check the president, not party versus party, but branch versus branch. The legislative branch should check the executive branch, not like Democrats in the legislature should check a Republican president. That's not what checks and balances are. It's not party-based, it's branch-based. We have this ignorant nation. We have people that don't read anymore, that don't understand their government to begin with, and they're locked in what I would describe as a me-centric or us-centric worldview. As long as my little life is okay, I'm not worried about everybody else. Democracy cannot continue like that. And the American democracy might not continue. It's the longest standing experiment of democracy in history. And it might be in its twilight. It might in fact stop. We might become more of an authoritarian country. That's very possible. And the level of ignorance, I would say, is allowing a lot of people to think, well, it can't happen. Trump's not really an authoritarian. It's in place. So it's so I see where you're coming from. It is possible we can do better, but it's going to take across a wide variety, a vast scope and scale of people really rolling up their sleeves and doing the work of democracy, left and right. Take the extreme, maybe the middle has to fight against the extremes. I don't know. Probably that's part of it, because the middle is where things get done. Things that are any good get done in the middle. Yeah, it's a scary time.
Yeah, it's a scary time. And at the same time, I believe that the world is shifting. Like, this pushback that we're experiencing is a big fight for, again, keeping white identity as superior to others, and the white supremacy ideology and the systems in place. Again, and that's what Trump represents. And his followers and believers want that as well. So, but see, until that gets called out for what it is, we do things like create false equivalencies that we see on the news when they say, well, the left and the right did this, and the left and the right did that. See, there is no false equivalency to racism and hatred and bigotry. You can't sit here and say, I see, you eliminate me when you say we're going to get rid of the fact that you can teach Black history in schools in Florida or anywhere else in the United States. You're going to get rid of at the Smithsonian Institute. You're going to get rid of, a lot of the Black historical things in the African American Museum of History and of African American History, a museum. You'll get rid of key things that happened during the Civil Rights Movement just because you say it doesn't fit the narrative that you want to teach, as though kids only get information from school. I mean, so it's like it's not even going to achieve your goal. That's the worst part. It's not even something that's going to work in your interest if you do get rid of that. It's just clearly saying that we want to keep a certain group of people subjective, marginalized, and oppressed no matter what. And if we can do that, then we're going to do that because we can, not because of any other reason other than the fact that we can. And so what it does, when it's shown throughout the years, and I even got part of that caught up in that myself, where I found that certain people who identify as Black was kept saying America hadn't changed. America was still just as racist. And I was pushing back on that. Like, no, it's not. You got more freedom nowadays. You can do these things. Look at the wealth that's been generated by Blacks in entertainment and sports. And I got caught up in that. But now I kind of see what they've been proven right. At the end of the day, the racism that was built when this country was formed is still at its core, and that has never changed throughout the years. It may have softened up in certain spots, but it never really got to the point where it changed completely. Like, for example, most people don't even realize that in Philadelphia, and this is in the 80s, there's an organization called MOVE, which was an organization of Black hippies, to use an analogy, of Black folks who decided they want to raise the kids the right way, pull them out of the system, not have an education system, not eat any more of the corporate foods and all the things that we all agree are bad, corporate diet, fast foods, all those things, public education. We're going to raise our kids ourselves. We're going to buy real estate. We're going to grow our own food, have our own land here in the city block. And how did the city of Philadelphia respond to that? They dropped a bomb on them. A city dropped a bomb on their houses. That's never happened in the history of the United States other than that one example. And again, a bomb. I mean, the city drops a bomb. So how do you ever get to the point where you can say, I feel confident that if we do go out here and build something of our own, for our own betterment, empowerment, which the right claims that we should be able to do, the minute we do that and you drop a bomb, I didn't know cities even had bombs to drop. So, I mean, just think about psychologically what that does to a young mind that sees that, it grow up in that, and then you realize that doesn't even get taught in history books at all. That, I guess that'd be considered woke if you mentioned that at a certain press conference. So to me, until that can actually be talked about without having people shun it, deny it, and just totally ignore it, I don't think America will ever change in that context for the better. Now, I think I'm finding people individually who are changing and not putting people in a collective. And I find that individuals who are adopting the fully human mindset, behavior, mentality, and want peace and justice, I'm finding more instances of that than I've ever seen before in my life. But politically, I don't know if that's going to be enough to sway the political arm that we're dealing with, especially when corporations control the media, which is the whole basis of the topic we talked about today.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with what you're saying. I didn't know about the Philadelphia thing. I'm interested in finding out more. But what we're experiencing today is the product of a deliberate program that's between 40 and 45 years old now. It began in the late 70s, and Ronald Reagan was the first president to buy into it. Began with the Heritage Foundation, Paul Weyrich and others. And they've been working at this, controlling state legislatures and the courts for going on 5 decades, and they've succeeded. With the second Trump presidency, with Project 2025 published, they've absolutely succeeded. And it is, if you read the language, they would deny this. And I read this, I haven't finished it. It's 900 some odd pages. But it's the language they use is a language of hate, of elimination, and it is effectively white Christian supremacy. Both of those are in there. They think that it's supposed to be a Christian nation, and it's a white nation, and it's incredibly well done and disturbing to read. And it's what Trump is enforcing. Trump signed on with the Christian right in 2016 after a conversation with Ben Carson and James Robeson, and they agreed that he was redeemable, even though they didn't like him. That he was the guy that if he prayed together, that Christians could get behind him, which is the biggest mockery fraud ever. And he basically agreed to promote their programs in exchange for their money and their support and their extraordinary nationwide organization of voter registration. And then they had, Project 2025 became available around 2023 when it was, after 40 years of building it. And that's what he's doing. If you look at all the executive orders and go back and read Project 2025, he's executing, as the chief executive, he's executing the Christian white Christian white nationalist agenda, even though he doesn't care about it. He just wants to be the guy in charge. He wants to be the important man. If the left had figured out a way to connive him to put out a woke agenda and given him money, he'd be doing that. He doesn't have an ideology other than Donald Trump as the boss. That's his ideology. So I think, usually you ask me what people should do moving forward. So I'll get to that right now. If you're serious about this and you care about the country, read Project 2025. Read it a little bit at a time. Don't read somebody's commentary on it. Think for yourself. I mean, the American Civil Liberties Union has a nice, they break it down. A few other organizations break it down. Don't do that. You're an adult. Read it yourself and draw your own conclusions. Then you can find out what other people say. Give yourself some time. Don't rush through it. Read Project 2025 and see if you agree with the language in it and the goals that are put forth within it. If you do, from where I'm sitting, you're part of the problem. You're going to have an authoritarian country. If you don't, decide what to do next. But this is what's happening to the United States right now. Almost 50 years of Project 2025 are coming to fruition right now. And you can find it online. Project 2025, go to the Heritage Foundation. There's a PDF. You can download it. Or you can buy the book, which I won't do because the Heritage Foundation is selling it, and I'm not giving them any money because I'm basically cheap. Print it out if you want to have. You only need 400 some odd pages of paper if you do front and back.
All right. Well, thank you for sharing that, Reggie. We reached a point on the show where now we want to end our show by giving examples of something positive, because we don't want to just give you gloom and doom, and we want to be able to give examples of people who we believe have shown exemplary, fully human behavior characteristics, whether in the past or they're showing it currently. Excuse me. And so with that being said, the person I want to choose today is the person I want to lift up and get their flowers to is a gentleman by the name of Paul Robeson. And Paul Robeson was a multifaceted gentleman. He was an actor. He was a singer. He was a scholar. He was an activist. He was a former football athlete, and managed to do all those things extremely well. So his identity wasn't just person, even though he was a man of color, a black man. He didn't identify as only a black man in his behaviors and his actions. He was able to transcend racial and cultural labels, and he inspired others by being a full human. Number two, again, as you all know, I group my people, or I categorize the people I choose based off 6 pillars that I believe define fully human according to my perspective and definition. So identity is number 1. Number 2 is growth mindset. He demonstrated remarkable ability evolving from law to performing arts and activism. And he constantly fought against racism and justice for all. He had a higher purpose and service mentality. It's a 3rd pillar. He was driven by a commitment to equality and anti-imperialism. Robeson used his platform for servant leadership, supporting causes like civil rights and international freedom movements. Number 4, his core principles, anchored in values of justice, equality, and human dignity. His principles guided consistent advocacy against oppression and for workers' rights. Number 5, a grateful spirit is the 5th pillar. Robeson expressed appreciation for his heritage and global connections, fueling his energy and resilience in the face of adversity. And finally, the 6th pillar is self-awareness. His reflective writings and speeches reveal deep insight into how his actions influence his destiny and broader societal change and social change as well. Now, in summary, Paul Robeson's life across these pillars reveals a profound through line of resilience and advocacy, where his emotional embodiment of growth mindset and purpose-driven service paradoxically amplified both his global impact and his personal isolations amid systemic oppression. Paul Robeson was definitely a great man, a great athlete, a great actor, singer, but more importantly, a human being that inspired others for years. And he didn't just fight for Black issues. He fought for workers' issues. He fought for human issues. And so today he's my gentleman that I want to lift up, or my example of someone I want to lift up as being fully human.
Yeah, thank you for that one. I realize you're raising the ante here because you're coming prepared with a written statement of who you're going to honor. And, when we began doing this, we would both just kind of think of somebody and kind of riff on it. And now you prepared these masterpieces, so you're putting some pressure on me. But anyway, I love that choice. And so that reminded me. So I don't think I've used this person before, but when you said his name, I was immediately reminded of a poem called "Cross That Line," written by one of my favorite living poets, if not my favorite, Naomi Shihab Nye, whose father was, he's now deceased, but it was from Palestine, and her mother was born in, I believe, St. Louis, Missouri. So she's, she had an American mother and a Palestinian father, and she's just a treasure in the United States literature and the world of poetry. And when I was doing poetry in the schools, one of her poems entitled "Kindness" was argued that might be the most well-known poem in America by school teachers, because so many school teachers used that poem with their students. And that's not scientifically, I can't prove that that's the case, but anecdotally, virtually every teacher who taught poetry knew her name, and most of them knew that poem, among many that were great. But she honored Paul Robeson with a poem entitled "Cross That Line." But more to the point, back when I was trying to figure out things with poetry, one of my books, I wanted to use 2 of her poems. And, I go about things the right way, getting permission from the publisher or whatever. And it was just, I didn't know how to do that. So I was sending emails to publishers and agents and everything. This is back, I don't know how many years now, somewhere in the late 90s, I think, early 2000s. And then one day I get on my email, I get an email, and it's from her, like from the Naomi Shihab Nye. That's like, like LeBron James sent me, or the president, not the President Trump, but a president I liked sent me an email. And so we had this wonderful exchange about permission and all that. And she basically said, you don't have to pay, there's no fee, just, whatever. So I sent her a copy of the book, but she jokingly said, typically I ask people to send, when they use my poems, to send me food that's unique to where you're from. So she was only joking, but I took her seriously because I'm such a good person. So I didn't really have, Yonkers didn't have that much going on. I said, all right, the greater New York City area. So one of my friends told me this great chocolate place in Brooklyn. So I sent her this really exquisite box of chocolates. And it arrived when she was traveling. And so her husband and son said it arrived, and she threatened them. He said, "Don't you open that until I get home." But anyway, she's had real tragedy in her life. She's this really grounded, kind person who has a powerful voice, both in writing and when she speaks. But she's, I think, an exemplar for being fully human in this country and internationally, because she's traveled the world and is a great advocate now for the people of Gaza, where her heart, I think, is being broken every day. So Naomi Shihab Nye is my person of my fully human connection today.
Excellent. Interesting story. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
Well, we've reached the end of our show. Again, thank you all for who hung in there. Our new show seems to be at the point where we can now, we've taken it to 110. I'm sorry, hour and 10 minutes beyond our show. That seems to be our average now. But for those who hung in, Reggie, again, thank you for being present, for bringing the topic, for writing a book, for being a fully human, been a great mentor to me. Listening audience, thank you all who listen to the show, whether it's live or when you listen to the replay of the show. We appreciate it. And to next Wednesday at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, let's all work and strive to be more fully human. Thank you.